don't know if I mean, is that going to... Yeah. All right, I got it, yeah. Thomas Finlay, I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Charlotte Independent Soccer Club.
Hi, I'm Neil Roberts. I'm the Director of Soccer at Charlotte Independent Soccer Club.
And we're happy to be here to
We're
talk.
really excited.
Yes. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
All right, so Neil, we're obviously, I think something that's very important to both of us is communication. And I think there's different layers of that, right, in the club. And communication in general is one of our 5 C's. For you, what does that mean as one of our 5 C's?
Well, Thomas, with communication being one of our core values, I mean, to me, it's woven in the fabric of our club at every level, whether it be from our admin team to our membership, or our coaches to our players, or our coaches to our families. It's just a vital piece of what we do as a club, and it's important. And I've always thought of communication as keeping people informed. Yep. I think that's a priority for us, for sure.
Absolutely, and it's everything. It's away from the club. It's very important in society, in any business, and within the club. It is such a key aspect in how we talk to people and how we listen to people as well. It's a respect thing. And anytime I think about communication, sometimes I have flashbacks to the Ted Lasso skit, the scene where he talks about curiosity. Yeah. People are so judgmental now. No one's curious. And I always kind of think about that and how communication and how we embrace it in a respectful way. We want people to ask us questions. We want to talk to our members. We want to talk to our community. And I think it's about that kind of curiosity thing. So if people are curious, if members are curious about aspects of the club, let's have conversations, chat about it.
Yeah, and I think some of the best tools that I've used in my career have been simply walking up and shaking hands with a parent and introducing myself. And kind of breaking that ice a little bit, because it is kind of human nature sometimes to think that a coach or a teacher is someone that you want to keep at arm's length, and it's actually the opposite. We really want to bring families together and people together through the sport of soccer, and extending an arm and a handshake and introducing yourself is what we're looking for. That just is the beginning of creating a relationship at our club where the players and the families feel like they're a part of something big and special.
Yeah, absolutely. And the parents are part of it too. It's not just the players and the coaches. And we at the club, we talk about players and parents and coaches and referees, and that makes me think about the Let Us Play campaign. You want to talk about that and what that means, and why we ask parents to act and behave a certain way on the sideline. We ask our coaches to act and behave a certain way on the sideline too, and players on the field. But what does Let Them Play and the communication aspect around that mean to you?
Yeah, Let Us Play is a key piece, in the development of our club, and the cultural strength of our club. To me, Let Us Play just really prioritizes the players, but also embraces the fact that we want a community atmosphere. We want parents involved. We want players all on the same page. Prioritize kind of the how and the why that we do a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the aspects as well, it can't be misunderstood, is within the Let Us Play, it's not like we're telling our coaches, let them play and don't coach. It's our philosophy where we want the players to make decisions for themselves on the soccer field, and that's the steepest learning curve to development. And that's one thing we want to embrace, and it's important that parents understand that. It's not we're telling our coaches, let them play and don't coach from the sideline, but it's through a guided discovery in how we teach the players and how they develop accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the game of soccer itself is the best teacher, and there's many times when you're on the sideline, it's very, very tempting to coach from the sidelines. So it's important for us in our development to let the game be the best teacher. And we also understand that success does come from failure at times. I'm even thinking, my mind's going rapidly right now, just thinking about this past weekend with my teams and some of the moments where I know for sure our players learned a lot from some different decision-making situations that went on. And when you talk to them after with the follow-up, you can kind of see the light bulb turn on, and that's really rewarding.
Yes, and that communication afterwards with the players is very important. And this past weekend, as a parent, it was great to see our coach come over and talk to the parents and say hello and say this is what we're working on. And that transparency builds trust and respect between the coaching staff and the parents. And I know that's important to us in the club and how we operate.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of you might know I had three boys that have worn the Independence badge over the course of their career, and clearly they've had different experiences with all of our coaching staff. But the most memorable experiences and the most positive ones are where the coach has been embracing to the families in the group and made it feel like the parents and the players and the coaching staff were all on the same page and one big team. And that makes for the best experience for everybody.
Yeah. One of my professional development time periods in my career was when I was young. I was in Holland, and I remember seeing a chart that Ajax had where the role of the parent with the player and how that evolves as the player ages. And I think that's key and important, even with us in our Kings program, with the U5 and the U6 player, we want that parent heavily involved. Sometimes we say the parents come on the field with the 4-year-olds and we get them involved in doing some skill work. But obviously, as that player ages up and goes through the pathway and evolves with age and skill and every other development, the parent has to step back from that role. They can't be heavily involved. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the more the player takes ownership on the field and it's not from the parent, the energy, enthusiasm, when that comes from the player, that's where the connection of the sport and the love with the player evolves and connects. And I think sometimes, on the flip side, when you see the parent yelling and screaming on the sideline and trying to give that energy and enthusiasm to the player, doesn't really work that way, and sometimes it's counterproductive.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been guilty myself at times of being an overzealous parent with the boys. And, I'm the first one to hear about that when they get in the car afterwards. So I remember those days. But yeah, it's one of those things for me, we want the families, we want the parents to trust us. And I feel like the best way for you to experience that trust is to just give this process some time. Soccer is a game that it really takes time to improve upon, and the developmental curve is different for every player, and it's different for every player within every team. So, my biggest challenge for families and parents is to give the process the time that it needs, and sit back a little bit and just kind of enjoy watching your son or daughter play.
I like that, Neil. And I think when I think more about that and the process and the time, we don't want to overfeed the answers to the players. So sometimes the players have to self-discover how they performed on the field. They have to go through the thought process, the self-evaluation process, or how did I play? And if we as coaches are hand-feeding them that information all the time, or giving them the answers to every single play that they're doing on the field, they're not really learning it and absorbing it. And I think what you just said there about giving the process some time, if our members and our parents can understand that and support that, because if not, every play would be saying, well, you could have done this or you should have done this. It doesn't work that way. And sometimes it takes a couple of days, it takes a couple of weeks, and sometimes a month for things to really settle in. And then that's when you can take a step back and see the true development of the player, rather than, okay, if my kid made a mistake here, what should they have done? And you can't hand feed that solution every single time to the player.
Yeah. If you cram for a test the night before and all you know is the answers, the black and white answers, you don't really learn the information, and it's not, ingrained in you forever. But if you take the time and learn the information and learn all of that, like we expect our players to do over the time with training and our curriculum and everything that we have set up for them, it all will line up in the long run.
Excellent. I now know why I can't remember stuff from college. No, I think it makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
No, if it does, I think you're bang on with that. Bang on with it. Let's talk about some. There's the unspoken rule, and it's also stated, the 24-hour rule, right? That's important, and I think there's some misconceptions about that, and sometimes some people feel as though you can't talk to the coach. Well, you can talk to the coach, right? But what we want to do is we want to create an environment where the player talks to the coach. So the last thing anybody needs, the parent, the player, or the coach, is if straight away after the game someone's running up to the coach to ask for a question. Hey, can I talk to you about my kid? We know where that comes from. It's coming from a place of you want to help support it, but there has to be some time and gaps and space within that. No, we want to open the door and say, hey, we want to talk to you. We want to have parent engagement. We want to talk about it. We want to provide transparency. But we also have to close the door on some of those conversations. We can't allow parents to run up to coaches and demand answers about what happened during the game. Anything that happens on the field, that's between the coach and the players. Right? It's not our coaches' jobs to tell the parents, hey, this is why we did this and we did that. We can explain it as a learning tool, so they're part of the process. But ultimately, we want the player to talk to the coach. He's like, hey coach, why am I not playing? And I know a lot of coaches in the higher levels in the club, we want the players to self-absorb that again, so they learn themselves ultimately. But talk about the parents, that 24-hour rule. When is it working? When does it not work? What's the parameters around the 24-hour rule?
Yeah, the 24-hour rule for me is in existence to provide some reflection time for everybody. And I think one of the most professional and mature things that you can do in your life is to reflect upon prior performance, no matter what you do, whether you're in the workplace or on the field. And so what we do with the 24-hour rule, we just ask that families and players refrain from, asking our coaches to discuss playing time or maybe issues that happened in the game. And we just ask that you guys take 24 hours to reflect and think a little bit and, try to put yourself in the coach's shoes and give yourself some time to think about really what the core questions you have are related to and how that you're going to approach the coach. And it also gives our coaches some time to think too, right? I mean, as I said, we challenge our coaches on a regular basis to reflect on their performance on match day and even after training. And so once they've had time to reflect a little bit on how their where they feel their performance was, it usually lines up. And then the last thing is, it just ends up being a better conversation.
Yes.
Both parties are typically prepared and maybe even a little bit more relaxed than they would be right immediately post-match. And I think it ends up being one solid, strong, productive conversation as opposed to 2 or 3 conversations that never really get connected and then certainly never come to a solution.
Absolutely. So let me ask a couple of questions, right? So even as a coach on the sideline, if I'm a parent, I can't coach the kids, even if I know the game, right? And that's a result of because what happens on the field is between the coach and the players, right? So even if Alex Ferguson or Emma who just won Olympic gold, if they're on the sideline, we don't want them coaching from the sideline too, because they don't know what was said in the pre-game talk and everything like that. So I get that. But what's some of the do's and don'ts for parents on the sideline or coaches on the sideline and communicating and things like that? So one don't, and I've heard this in the club, and this can't happen, parents, is when a parent texts the coach on the sideline during the actual game. This has happened. So we can't have parents texting our coach during the game and saying, why is my son or daughter not playing in this position? So we know that's a no-no. That's a don't do that. But what can parents do on the sideline?
The way I look at it, for our parent sideline, we really want to encourage our parent sideline to be a supporters group for our players and for our club. And to Thomas's point, any kind of social media interaction with our coaching staff during a match would be a violation of that 24-hour rule, and we ask that you avoid that at all costs. The other thing is, on that note, I mean, we've all been in some really hard matches and things like that, and the last thing a coach is going to want to do is get into a hot car and pick up his phone and have to read text messages that are maybe negative in nature about the game that he's just as frustrated about, right? So I think that's one of those times where you put yourself in the coach's shoes and no one wants to hear that, But regarding like that supporters environment, like I just had a parent meeting with one of my teams the other day, and I encouraged like supportive behavior, cheering, just getting behind everybody and really being positive on the sideline. And there's a fine line between coaching from the sideline and being a supporter. And you mentioned, Thomas, I'll tell you, nowadays there are so many parents on the sideline that have experience in the game.
Yep.
And I think that's a cool thing, because I've engaged in several conversations with some parents that have a really good working knowledge of the game. They're supporters. You get a lot of people that are educated in the game. But we think it's really important that we kind of draw that line and make sure that the coaching from the sideline is only of a nature where it's a supportive nature. Even something as simple as saying, step up, that's kind of coaching from the sideline, or pass it, or shoot, right? It's actually kind of trying to influence what the player does. And we really want the players to make those decisions on their own.
Yeah, I remember one time in the office, this is going back in maybe a year, I couldn't find something on the screen. And I had two people behind me and tell me, it was like, no, go left. And I'm trying to move the mouse. And by both of them telling me what to do, I got, there was anxiety, there was too much information, and I couldn't find it myself. And so I think about that sometimes as the players. If they're getting instructions from the players and the coach, that's great. But when there's other parties involved, that's what it is. But I think in a nutshell, we want parents to talk on the sideline. We want them to encourage the players, but it's within certain guardrails that don't overflow into the technical or the tactical world.
Yeah, and there's just some other little parameters I wanted to bring up too, like, from a character perspective, which is another one of our core values. We really hope and would like for our parents to be great examples to the other team. There's going to be, the opponent sometimes can be, maybe of not the same principle or character as our club. And it's sometimes very difficult to kind of be a supporter on our side and also have to manage that. But if you guys can just kind of upgrade your character and commitment to the club values, that goes a long way. It's really good on a Monday to hear that we have a really positive behavior from the parent sideline. We want to also stay off the officials and leave the officials to officiating themselves, leave the linesman to managing the game as he or she sees fit. And then the other small detail, I want everybody to know this, and it's interesting. You would think more people know this by now, but would be an assumption on my part. We want our supporters, our parents, we'd like for you to be on the same half of the field opposite our team bench. So we really want to avoid any mixing of parents with the opponent, right? So if you're a Charlotte Independence family and parent coming to watch one of our games, we ask that you stay on the same side of the field for the entire match, regardless of which team is attacking either direction. We want to be opposite our bench.
Yeah, these are all great points, and we're so fortunate we get to coach kids and work in that environment, and we do have certain values that we want and principles, and as long as we establish those guardrails, and parents, cheer as loud as you can on that sideline. Support your children. We want that. We want you to support the team. We want you to support the club, and just do it within certain guardrails, and we're all happy. And no, it's not parent education, and we say that too much sometimes. I think when we say parent education, it may come across the wrong way. I think parent education and parent transparency with the club and what we want to do, I think that's more relative and important for us to communicate out. So communication is very important to us in the organisation. It's everything. It's the same away from the field, at home, in your day job and everything else. Communication is everything, and it comes from a respectful tone. It comes from an area of want to develop and improve things from our club. So we embrace it. We embrace the communication, and we hope everybody does too.
Yeah, I'll share with you this last thing here, that I was a while back interviewing for a job, and the athletic director asked me a question. He said, "Neil, what are you going to do about the parents?" And I actually just took a second to think about it, and my answer was, I'm just going to keep them informed. And that's what our goal is. We want to keep you guys informed. We want you guys to be ahead of the curve and know what's going to happen with your son or daughter at our club. But we also want you to feel like you're part of it as well, right? And so I think today we've given you the opportunity to know when and where the communication can take place. And like I said, trust us with your son or daughter. We appreciate that, and we feel strongly that they'll have a great experience.
Yeah. And I think one of the important things is for parents to understand we do have a parent communication protocol within the club. If you do have questions, if they're of a technical nature, please start with your coach. And if the coach is unable to provide the answers, and maybe not the answers you want to hear, but if they're unable to provide the answers, then reach out to the director of that program, and then ultimately, Coach Neil here is director of soccer. That's important that you understand there is a pathway of communication in the club that you can reach out and ask for any answers that you need. And also on the non-technical side, we have our member services. And all of that will eventually come to myself if we're unable to answer any questions. So you'll be able to see that communication protocol visually as part of this video, and we hope you embrace that and use it whenever needed.
One of the hardest conversations that you'll have is that first one, right, where you want to engage with the coach or have your player engage with the coach. But I've always said once you have that, break that ice, it gets easier and easier every time after that.
So Neil, thank you for your time. This is fun. This has been good communication between
Absolutely.
me and you.
Good stuff, Thomas.
All right.